President Trump now admits for the first time that his son's 2016 Trump Tower meeting with a Russian lawyer was designed to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. It is a federal crime to accept anything of value from a foreign person for the purpose of influencing an election. Sources tell CNN the president is growing concerned about Don Jr.'s legal exposure for his involvement in that meeting.
The president's lawyer is now changing his story. Attorney Jay Sekulow says he made a mistake last year when he said that President Trump was not involved in crafting a misleading statement on the Trump Tower meeting. Sekulow blames the false statements on what he calls bad information. The question is, bad information from whom? Let's begin our coverage of CNN's Abby Phillip, live in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, following the president. Abby.
Well, good morning, John. The president over the weekend lashing out at Robert Mueller, both at a campaign rally and also on Twitter, tweeting about that infamous Trump Tower meeting involving his son, Don Jr., and saying in the clearest terms yet that this meeting was just about getting dirt on Hillary Clinton and not at all about anything else, including Russian adoptions. He says this was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally illegal and done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. The president claiming that there is nothing illegal about it, but we do know that it is not legal to accept help from a foreign government in an American campaign. And he also claims at the end of this tweet that he knew nothing about this meeting. But we also know that Michael Cohen, the president's former personal attorney, according to sources to CNN, has said that he's willing to testify to Mueller that the president knew in advance about this Trump Tower meeting and approved it. All of this happening, as a source close to the White House tells us, that the president is growing increasingly concerned about how the Mueller probe could be affecting his family, particularly Donald Trump Jr., who was at the center of this Trump Tower meeting. Now, a source close to Don Jr. is saying that he's not at all concerned about what he's testified so far about this meeting. He believes that he has told the truth so far, but all of this could be coming to a head very soon. The president is here in Bedminster, New Jersey, at his golf course, where he's having a working vacation, but he's expected to potentially meet with his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, about the ongoing negotiations about talking to Robert Mueller in an interview. They are still deliberating that as we speak, and we're expecting the Trump team to potentially get a response back to Mueller's team about the negotiations on this interview as early as this week. So we'll be looking for all of those developments this week, Allison.
Okay, Abby, thank you very much for all of that. Meanwhile, the president and his son, Don Jr., have told several contradictory stories about that infamous Trump Tower meeting. So if you need a reminder about all of their various positions, here is a cheat sheet. July 8th, 2017, okay, so a little more than a year ago, the New York Times first reported on that meeting. Don Jr. then responded with a statement claiming it was about Russian adoptions. One day later, the Times reported that the president's son was promised dirt on Hillary Clinton at that meeting. 2 days later, Don Jr. released his email exchanges with that publicist, Rob Goldstone, discussing dirt on Hillary Clinton and saying, if that's what you say, I love it. The president denied knowing about that meeting beforehand. July 12th, multiple reports indicate that while on Air Force One, President Trump was involved in preparing Don Jr.'s statement about that meeting, claiming it was only about Russian adoptions. The president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, denied Mr. Trump had any involvement. Then, August 1st, the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, admits the president weighed in on the statement. But Don Jr. tells the Senate Judiciary Committee in September his father had nothing to do with crafting the statement. That false statement has gotten the attention of Congress. Well, in January of this year, the president's lawyer tells special counsel Robert Mueller in a letter that Mr. Trump dictated that statement himself. Okay, fast forward to late last month. CNN reports that Michael Cohen, the president's longtime attorney and fixer, is willing to tell the special counsel that the president did know about the 2016 Trump Tower meeting in advance. That brings us to yesterday and the president's tweet, where the president admitted for the first time that the meeting was designed to get information on an opponent. But again, he claimed he did not know about it. Okay, that gives us a lot to chew on. So let's bring in former White House communications director and CNN political commentator Jennifer Psaki and CNN legal analyst. Good morning, Carrie Cordero. Good morning to both of you. Okay, Carrie, I'm sorry I'm such a stickler for the law this morning, but I just feel the need to read to people what the law is so everybody can hear with their own ears and know for themselves what we're talking about. Here it is. Thank you, John Berman, very much for handing me this. This is the federal election statute. Federal law makes it a crime for any person to solicit, accept, or receive a contribution of anything of value, meaning dirt on an opponent, from a foreign person for a U.S. political campaign or for the purpose of influencing any election for federal office. You're the lawyer. Why isn't this case closed? Isn't that all you need to know?
Well, the law is pretty clear on that. The way that it has usually been used in the past is about money. So a campaign contribution that is received from a foreign entity, that would be something that would fall into the category of a clear violation of this campaign finance law. The questions in this case would be, number one, is derogatory information or political opposition research, does that fall into the category of a thing of value? And two, did the Trump campaign actually receive information? Those are the questions that I would imagine the special counsel's office is exploring, and the answers to their assessment of those questions is what would determine whether or not they would actually bring a case based on the facts in this particular situation.
And it's up for interpretation right now. We do not know, I think, how a court would decide this. But to suggest it's totally legal, which is what the president said, not quite true at this point based on our understanding of it. We don't know. And also what Jay Sekulow said, I don't know if any laws were violated or what law would be violated. That's not really true either because there is this law, again, at least open to interpretation. And Jen Psaki, beyond the law, there is the politics of this and also just the morality of it. President Trump now says something flat out. He says that that meeting that Donald had in Trump Tower, this was a meeting to get information on an opponent. Flat out says it. He writes it right out there. Last year he said something that was similar, yet it was in the context of the White House still trying to spin it was about adoptions. Now he comes out and says it. This is admitting in a way that his statement that he dictated was misleading.
That's right. And we always litigate whether or not tweets are presidential statements, but these are words that President Trump is uttering via Twitter to confirm what this meeting was about. Now, I've done 3 presidential campaigns, countless local races. Never would it be the case that you would meet with a foreign government to get information on your opponent. That does not happen. It is not normal. And obviously, this is something that, takes this in a different direction and really opens up a trove of questions about what was received.
But just to stick on that point for a moment, Jen Psaki, as you know, the Republicans, Devin Nunes and others say, no, it was Hillary Clinton that was colluding with the Russians because of that dossier. Can you just explain your take on why that is not the case?
Sure. Well, Allison, I think as we all know, the dossier is not the basis at all for the investigation. People around the investigation have confirmed that. People in Congress have confirmed.
Well, hold on.
That.
It wasn't the sole. It wasn't the sole factor.
It is not the sole factor.
But it was part and parcel of other things that they were also hearing.
Absolutely, but there are details in the dossier that have now also been confirmed. I understand why it's difficult for any Republican in Congress to explain what's happening and to try to defend the president from their own party, but it's probably why they should stop doing it.
And again, that's the law. We're looking into the law here, and that will be interpreted by the courts. And there's also the politics in Jay Sekulow, who yesterday, a year ago, came out and said the president did not dictate the response to the Trump Tower meeting. Yesterday, he told George Stephanopoulos he had bad info. Listen to what he says.
I had bad information at that time. I made a mistake in my statement. I've talked about that before. That happens when you have cases like this. I think it's very important to point out that in a situation like this, you have, over time, facts develop. That's what investigations do.
Carrie, how does a lawyer get bad information like that?
Well, normally the way a lawyer would get bad information is if their client is not truthful with them or if they're, or I guess another way would be if they're not effectively communicating with their client. But if your client is someone, you know, the president is his client, and the president, we know from his public statements, lies repeatedly. So I'm not sure if there would be a difference between the way he acts privately. What's interesting about this particular issue is actually what the president has now confirmed that the purpose of the meeting was is consistent with what the Senate Judiciary Committee released in the spring, which was the transcript of Donald Trump Jr.'s statements to the Senate Judiciary Committee, in which he said the purpose of the meeting was to obtain derogatory information on the political candidate. So Don Jr. did tell the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they released that information. What's different, I think, this week is the president confirming that. And really, his other lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, has been laying the groundwork for this over the last week, where he's been saying, well, I don't know if collusion is a crime. So they really have been expanding, I think, their public messaging of what they're trying to get people to think is acceptable.
And so, Jen, if Don Jr.'s testimony to Congress was misleading and false, what do you think Congress is going to do?
Well, we haven't exactly seen a lot of courage from Republicans in Congress on Russia or any of these issues throughout the investigation. You mentioned Devin Nunes earlier. So what are they going to do? I don't think anyone should have high hopes that they're going to further the investigation, that they're going to take additional steps, because we haven't seen evidence of that courage to date.
Well, didn't Chuck Grassley say that they would look into that?
What Chuck Grassley said is that the FBI or authorities want to investigate whether there was perjury. It's left up to them. He kicked the ball. He kicked the can over to investigators there, which gets to the point that Carrie was making. I think it's so important here. We now know what happened. We now know what this meeting was about. We've known about it for a long time. It's up to politicians. It will be up to the members of Congress to decide whether that bothers them. Does it bother you, members of Congress, that Donald Trump Jr., the Trump campaign, Jared Kushner was in there, Paul Manafort, went to a meeting to get dirt from the Russian government? Does it bother you? Are you willing to take action?
I mean, or does it bother you when you're lied to?
There's that, too. Does it bother you when you're lied to?
It should.
The facts are laid out now, and it will be up to Congress. Robert Mueller is going to write a report. We don't know when. Could be very soon. He's going to write a report. I don't know exactly what's going to be in that report, but even if it's just what we know, it will be up to Congress to decide what to do with it. And they will have to stand. They will have to make a choice here. It'll be interesting to see what they do, Carrie, because this isn't about indicting a president. Ultimately, there's a political decision to be made.
That's right. So assuming that the special counsel's office adopts the longstanding Justice Department legal opinion that a sitting president cannot be indicted, the question becomes, what are the particular criminal charges that the special counsel's office may continue to bring? They've already indicted a lot of people. They've already had a lot of guilty pleas. They've already exposed the Russian intelligence operation that was intended to affect the election. So if there is a remainder, which would be information that they've obtained about the president or other individuals in the campaign that don't rise to the level of warranting a criminal indictment, or they think they can't do that because it affects the president specifically, the special counsel can write a report. It would go to the acting attorney general for this investigation, Rod Rosenstein, and he would determine whether to release that report publicly or deliver it to Congress. And then this is a political question. And we are already seeing the avenues that which Congress needs to consider. And those include, is it acceptable? Is it politically acceptable for a political campaign to even entertain the idea of affecting the election or receiving information from an adversary foreign government, not a friendly foreign government, an adversary foreign government?